What's up everyone, Thralls Mandala here once again. I'm Necrotic, and I'm doing another collection update. It seems like it's been a while since I've done one of these because I have to get the stuff through the mail, can't go to regular stores, courtesy of COVID and all that. But I've been hitting up Bandcamp, Discogs, Amazon, and just trying to pretty much catch up on other stuff that came out, and some older stuff that I needed to patch up the collection in terms of like holes and discographies and such. So let's get right into it. Nightingales, Towards the Twilight. Straight up melodic death metal band from Germany. This is their 1997 debut, and it's pretty much straightforward melodic death metal. Very at the gates, in flames. I would say even the vocalist kind of sounds a lot like Thomas Lindberg. Pretty much, you know, everything you would expect out of melodic death metal. The really cool lead melodies. It's very catchy, almost kind of folky in places. I will say the production is good, except for the snare sounds a little plunky. That's just kind of me, it's personal taste there. But overall, this is a pretty good one. The only thing I had by then was a later album, and I thought it was good, and jammed it again. I was like, yeah, maybe I should check out more other stuff, and picked up this one, and this is really good. Like, if you love straightforward melodic death metal, there's probably nothing on here you wouldn't like. Check it out. Impious Terror Succeeds. This is their second full length. It's one of the few I was missing. I think I'm still missing, like, one. And I never actually jammed this one before. I just saw it for a decent price on Discogs and ordered it, and this is a banger. I really like the fact that this is very fast, aggressive melodic death metal. Now, later on in their career, they would shift over to more just straightforward death metal. A lot of the melodic death metal elements kind of disappeared on, I believe it was their last release, because it's kind of unknown in terms of if this band's still around, on hiatus, broken up. I couldn't really find anything. But I really dig this. The riffs are fast and thrashy. It's very blast beat driven too, which, you know, definitely reminds me more of like Black Dahlia Murder. But this is like, I don't know, Deicide doing melodic death metal. It is straightforward, in your face, flying almost at all times. Pretty decent production on this too. I kind of like the more raw, gritty approach, and it has, of course, that thrashy feel, which I really dug. Good stuff. I still need, I think, one more album of theirs to pretty much complete their discography. But jamming this again makes me want to go back and jam their other albums too. I really remembered I liked a couple of their other albums as well. Either way, check it out. It's a good time. Master, Vindictive Miscreant. Been going through and collecting all the Master albums that I'm missing. I found this one for a decent price. This one came out on Transcending Obscurity in 2018. I didn't have it and figured why not. And this is an alright album. It's very punky, which is kind of interesting. That's kind of part of their sound. But this one seems very punk forward. It's very, very meat and potatoes. Sometimes a little too meat and potatoes. Like, some of the songs are a little dull. But there are really cool elements of like sludge metal in there. And when they do get punky, it kind of reminds me of Autopsy, which I'm a huge Autopsy fan, so that's always cool. But yeah, as far as the later Master albums I picked up, there haven't been many that I've really super got into. And it seems like they bounce around between labels a lot, which is kind of confusing because I think I have some that are on FDA, others that are on different smaller labels. But it's a pretty decent release. I mean, if you like Master, you pretty much know what you'd expect here. Pretty solid stuff. Again, very mean potatoes, but if you love that sort of thing, definitely check it out. Voracious Scourge, Our Demise EP. This is a band that features the frontman from Sinister and Mike Smith from Suffocation on drums, or formerly of Suffocation, rather. And it pretty much sounds pretty much like a mix of the two, which I was very happy with. Production is a little drum forward, but, I mean, it's Mike Smith, so I can't fucking blame him. Dude's fucking awesome. Straight up brutal death metal, very 90s feel. Again, honestly, it sounds like early Sinister and early Suffocation across the board. 5 songs in this, but the first one's an intro, which on an EP I don't think an intro is very necessary. Overall, though, the songwriting's pretty solid, and there's a little bit of melody, too, which I was really surprised by. It isn't all just go for brutality left and right. There's actually some really cool, like, melodic leads and such on here. But yeah, pretty solid stuff. It's a small offering. I think it's the only thing they have out. This came out on Immortal Souls Productions, which I'm not familiar with. I think this might be the only release I have on that label. But yeah, I mean, if you love Suffocation and Sinister, there's a good chance you'll probably really dig this. Check it out. Thanatos, Violent Death Rituals. When I saw they were coming out with a new album, I had to get it. I love Thanatos. They are one of my favorite like early death metal / death thrash bands. They really definitely walk that line, very similar to bands like Vader, Pestilence, Possessed. Super underrated band. If you've never heard these guys, go back and pretty much jam their entire back catalog. They're fucking incredible. This is another killer offering from them. It just pretty much barrels through just riff-laden, just thrashy death metal. It's fucking awesome. The production is very full. Just big, chuggy riffs left and right. Lots of cool lead work. This is another solid entry in this band's back catalog. And again, if you've never jammed these guys before, definitely check them out. They're awesome. I'd even say this isn't a bad place to start with, but I love their older stuff too. But yeah, check this out. Six of Swords. And this is a compilation of their 2 EPs, Regime Decay and Polar Vortex. And this is a joint release between Redefining Darkness and Raw Records. And this is just awesome, chuggy, old school death metal. And when I say chuggy, I mean this album thrives on chug. It is so fucking heavy. I absolutely love the sound overall. It's very comparable to Gate Creeper. These guys were going to open for Temple of Void when they were going to do their regular release party. Unfortunately, I believe that got canceled due to the COVID as well. But I definitely want to see these guys live now. This is amazing from start to finish. I just love how nasty and heavy and groove-laden this is. It is just fantastic. Start to finish, just rip through it. I mean, if you can find both EPs too, grab those two. I'm sure those will be collector's items or whatever, since they're probably limited prints. But this is what I found, and I'm so glad I found it. This is awesome. Check it out. Four Doors to Death 2. This is the first time I bought a compilation in forever. Like, outside of like getting free samplers and shit, I haven't actually bought a compilation in forever just because they seem to go out of style like a while ago. Everyone's just downloading digital stuff, and I love compilations, are great. And this is pretty much a 4-way split since we only have 4 bands on here with multiple tracks. Nucleus, Ectoplasma, Fetid Zombie, and Temple of Void are all on here. Nucleus is the one that opens up the first 2 tracks, I believe, and it starts off very death doomy, but it gets into their kind of brand of almost like old school death metal meets tech death, at least in terms of the riff structure. They kind of do those interesting riffs like Immolation or Demolish. Pretty good stuff. Then we get into Ectoplasma, and I already love these guys. I have all their releases, so getting some more stuff from them that was unreleased was absolutely awesome. It's just fucking amazing old school death metal, real gritty, dirty sounding production. It just pretty much fits the overall tone of their sound. It's just nasty. Fetid Zombie is admittedly a little bit more difficult for me to get into. I know it was originally an all one-man band. I think it was Mark Riddick, the guy that does all the cover art, which I believe this looks like his cover art anyway. So yeah, there's a bit of a tie-in there. Sometimes it just comes off flat out cheesy, to be honest. Namely, I think it's the keys that come in there, and the fact that I believe in the studio it's a drum machine. It might not be on this one because I believe he has a full band now, but I'm not entirely sure. But I thought the songs were all right. They weren't the highlights on here for me, but they were still pretty good. And then Temple of Void's tracks on here are just monstrous, of course, because Temple of Void's just amazing. I love their flat-out gritty Death Doom style. I can't wait to see these guys live sometime, you know, whenever concerts are a thing again. Loved all their tracks. I like the fact that there's a kind of a cool acoustic track in between the 2 main tracks in terms of their segment on here. Excellent stuff. I flat out love this compilation. Again, hadn't bought a compilation forever, and I saw this was available, and I saw who all was on it. I was like, shit, let's get a fucking comp. And this is a banger. I believe it's on Unspeakable Axes and Dark Descent's Bandcamps. Either way, try to find it. I think there's probably a link to it in Temple of Void's Bandcamp as well. But yeah, definitely check this out. It's a damn good listen. Avichi, The Divine Tragedy. Since going over the underrated black metal albums that I did, jamming Avichi again, I was like, man, fuck, I really love this band. And that was the only album I had, so I decided to go out and pick up another one of theirs on Discogs. And I believe this is their first one. It might be their second one. Can't quite remember. But again, this is another awesome entry. One-man band, at least in the studio. I think he might have had a different drummer on this one, but flat-out killer, just dissonant, atmospheric, but still really crunchy and heavy black metal. Vocals still border a bit on death metal, but I like the fact that he chose a deeper register instead of doing like a higher shriek. It just makes it sound more cavernous. Love this album. I don't know if it's as good as Devil's Fractal, because I really, really love that album. But this is another awesome entry, and again, this band has been broken up for a while, so trying to find all their stuff, so I think it's only one more album, and then that's pretty much it, unless we're going after splits and shit. But yeah, definitely check this out. These guys are fucking awesome. Beast of Revelation, the Ancient Ritual of Death. This is a Death Doom supergroup, I guess you could call it. Two of the members are former members of Asphyx. I can't remember their names offhand. And then they have John McEntee from Incantation just doing vocals on here, which I'm a huge Incantation fan. I love his giant cavernous vocals. So on paper, this sounded like a really cool idea. And when I jammed it, this is good. But I don't think it's as good as either one of the bands they came from. Sometimes these songs get a little long-winded, and there's not enough dynamics in them to really kind of lift them up to like the level of like a Hooded Menace or something like that. It's heavier than hell, though. I mean, it is just massive sounding. But unfortunately, a lot of the tracks aren't as memorable. There's some really good ones on here, but most of it kind of falls into the it's good, but the other bands that they comprise are definitely better. And that's kind of the thing with supergroups, unfortunately. Generally, the sum of the parts don't necessarily always equal the whole. And sometimes it's a bit of a letdown. This isn't that much of a letdown. I think it's still really good. It's just, unfortunately, I just end up comparing them to the bands they're in. But I still recommend jamming this. I got this directly from Iron Bonehead, and I still got to hit up their Bandcamp for more stuff because I know they have tons of other cool releases. But yeah, definitely check this out. It's good stuff. Oak, Lone. This came out last year. This band is a funeral doom / death doom band from Portugal. And this is just absolutely amazing. There's only 4 tracks on here. I brought this up in the Metalhead box because this is one that came in the Metalhead box. And I was right about the longer tracks because the first 2 tracks comprise over 35 minutes of material. And it's awesome. Very dynamic. It really embodies the funeral doom and death doom feel. Most of the funeral doom in the first 2 tracks, not only because they're long, but there's like more melodic pauses in there. The last 2 tracks are a little bit shorter. I mean, by a little bit shorter, I mean they're under 10 minutes. But they definitely have more of a death doom feel to it. I absolutely love this. This was great. This is one that kind of flew under the radar for me, I guess, last year. And I know one of our subs for sure definitely recommended this to me, and I probably only glanced over it just because there's so much shit I listen to. But yeah, you were right. This is incredible. I absolutely love this. Definitely has that kind of esoteric vibe, but also like, Hooded Menace and shit, and I love that sort of stuff. Definitely check this out. And if you got a Metalhead box with this in it, I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Okay, we got a split between Ruin and Macabra. Die and Retry. Now, this was the other one that came in the Metalhead box for me, and this came out on Von Frost's Coffin Records, which I am not familiar with at all. And it's pretty good. Love the Ruin half. Ruin's awesome. Really cool brand of sludgy death metal. Big cavernous gurgled vocals. And I love the almost kind of tongue-in-cheek horror aspects. Like the second track in here is called I Love Blood. Third one is Stab Wounds, 1,821,914. I assume that's the number of stab wounds there were, and it's got to be some sort of fucking record. Awesome stuff from Ruin. I have 2 of their full lengths. They're both awesome. And then we get to Macabra. Now, Macabra is another project that has Mark Riddick in it. And this one is one he does all the music for. Drum machines, keys, guitars. I don't know if there's an actual bass on there or it's just synthesizer. And then a vocalist, which I forget what band he's actually in, but I believe he is from Europe. I can't remember which country. Shit. But unfortunately, that half of the split is not very good. At least in my opinion. Like, sometimes it just feels like the songs aren't syncing up properly. Like, the drum beat is doing one thing while the guitars are not necessarily following it at all. In fact, it just sounds like it's off. Like the audio didn't match up or something like that. Like it's a studio mistake almost. If that was their intent to do something maybe like, I don't know, avant-garde or off time, it still didn't work. It just doesn't really work as a hook at all in any of the songs. And the keyboards are kind of cheesy on this. I have their full-length album. I thought it was a lot better than what's on the split. I don't know, maybe it was rushed out. And the instrumental on here, which is simply called instrumental, is not really an instrumental. It's more of just a sort of synthy interlude to the next song, which that next song wasn't very good either, honestly. Wanted to like all of it, honestly, but I only ended up really liking the Ruin half of it. But the Ruin half of it is absolutely slick. And again, check it out. If you got it in your Metalhead box, check it out. You know, don't just trust me. And if you didn't get the Metalhead box, still check it out. Just, you know, like I said, it's just my opinion on it, but I mean, I went into that loving Ruin and came out of it still not really big on Macabra. I suppose they all can be zingers, though. Skam, Sounds of a Disease. This is a grindcore band from Sweden, and this came out also on Redefining Darkness Records, and this is just insane grindcore. It's grindcore to a degree, and then in some parts it really kind of sounds a lot like a Null Nothrak. Like there's some keys I think that are in there, or at least layering it. The vocals are very distorted, like there's almost kind of a static screech to them, and it really just works with the overall sound. This is just heavy as hell. It's not entirely all blast beats too. They get them down in some nice little groovy sections and some real good chuggy, almost death metal sections. I guess you could call it almost death grind, but I think this is pretty much purely grindcore. Found these guys just kind of looking around on YouTube, and I was on Gore Grinder's channel, and they had this entire album, and I ended up jamming it, and I was like, dude, I'm getting this shit. Hit up their Bandcamp, and yeah, this is absolutely awesome. Definitely check it out if you're a fucking grindcore nut like I am. Wake, Devouring Ruin. Now, we actually thought about reviewing this one on its own. This came out this year on Translation Lost Records, and kind of wish we had, because man, this is an excellent album. I guess these guys used to be more of a grindcore band / crust / you know, whatever. And honestly, I'd only heard of these guys. I didn't own anything by them. And this is my first Wake album, and holy shit, this is awesome. This is definitely more blackened death metal, but it is very distant. Like, it almost has kind of grindcore production to it. Like, it's very crunchy and nasty, and the guitars just sound extra raw in here. But it's loaded with cool atmosphere and lots of really good clean guitar melodies and such. Parts even remind me of like a blackened death version of Mastodon, which, that's awesome. I fucking love Mastodon. This is a killer fucking release. If you're looking for something that is just blackened, but not entirely just black metal, and fucking heavy and riffy as hell, but of course loaded with dissonant atmosphere, holy shit, this is it. Really good release. I definitely gonna be jamming this one a lot in the future. Gutted, Bleed for Us to Live. Now, there's a story as to how I got this, because this is a really, really rare album. And this is a reissue that's also rare. This is the Repulsive Echo version. I believe there's only like 300 copies. A good friend of Jammin' John said he had extra copies of this and was willing to sell it to me for a undisclosed price. We're not even going to go into that. It's not as much as you think it is, but let's just say I got a pretty solid deal on this. And I think I did promise that when I die, he gets it back. I think I rushed into that promise really quickly. But either way, I have it now, and I'm alive. That's awesome. Either way, this is one of my hometown's underground death metal bands from the 90s. This came out originally in 1994, and these guys had a solid following for a while. This is just great old school death metal. It's very groove oriented. There's definitely a ton of like Obituary, kind of Broken Hope sort of groove in there. Really solid production too for the time. I would even say bits of it kind of remind me of early Jungle Rot as well. It's very meat and potatoes. The vocals are awesomely over the top. They're not quite like John Tardy, but they're pretty close in spots. And I love when vocals are just kind of over the top in death metal. Like, that's just kind of fun. Really good stuff. Love this album art too. And it's awesome to finally own this. I've been trying to find a copy of this for a decent price for fucking forever, because I was late on this band. I had not heard about them until probably 4 years ago, and I was like, oh wow, Toledo had another cool death metal band, because we had other ones too. But this one was actually pretty well noted. And through a series of cool events, I finally got my copy. So yeah, super happy about getting this, and if you've never heard this, definitely check this out. If you love old school death metal, there's a good chance you'll really dig this. And finally we have Huntsman, Mandala Fear. This is their new album out on Prosthetic Records, and this is a double album. And it is fucking sweet. I really enjoyed their debut album, American Scrap. I thought it was a really good blend of doom metal, stoner metal, a little bit of post metal, and kind of like a folkish aspect as far as like lyrical themes and storytelling and such. They pretty much continue that theme on this, but I think to even greater levels, and they bring in some more kind of progressive influences. The first track in here, Right Out, really has kind of a Yes feel, except in kind of stoner metal way. The vocal harmonies are really what kind of set it off. And then there's parts in here that definitely remind me of Tool, like long, riffy instrumentals, but they're still loaded with atmosphere. Very well written songs. I absolutely love this album, and both discs are a little bit different too. The second one is a little bit heavier. It has more of like a Neurosis vibe, whereas the first one has more of like that Sword, Sleep, Tool, you know, whatever, Mastodon, Baroness, all that shit. Check this out. This is absolutely incredible. I'm going to be jamming it a lot. Really amazing album. It's fucking incredible. All right, well, that wraps up another one of these. God, man, it seems like it's forever since I've done one of these. Getting stuff in the mail is cool, and getting stuff off Bandcamp is really cool, too, because, you know, I definitely feel like I'm directly supporting the artists, but I still miss going to record stores, and, you know, even when businesses eventually reopen, I don't know, I'm still going to be a little hesitant, just because I don't want to get this shit. It seems like it's a pretty fucking rough time, and just getting the flu fucking sucks, so this can't be much better. So, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do shit like this all the time. Catch you guys later.